Okay, so it's my honor to introduce Nobi for his second talk. One thing I do want to say is that the topic today is all about social resilience, although resilience is not in the title, because inequality and stagnation are all important issues of social resilience. So actually, we have the college has a resilience center, and they require the word resilience. But even though this is not in the title, but this is really, I think the real issues of, the earliest usage of resilience is actually in macroeconomics when you think about shocking away from the balanced growth path and how do you come back. But yeah, and as I said yesterday, so Nobu tries to link these small things or different features of the macroeconomy to these important big questions. So yeah, so let's welcome Nobu.
Thank you. Coming here again. This is the joint work with Shenxin Zhan, the same course, one of as yesterday's. And the question is about the intangible capitals and as well as inequality and stagnations. And today I'm emphasizing slightly different aspects of intangible, which is more like a human capital aspect. Yesterday's one is more like a productivity of the facilities, and the productivity evolves due to the input of human capital of the key workers. So we try to now emphasize the accumulation of human capital. And the motivation is similar to yesterday's, and coming from Japan, this is the per capita real GDP. So the red one is Japan, and the blue one is Italy. Yeah. Can you see it, or you will not see it? It's okay. So you can see it, right? So basically this is a log scale. So slope is a growth rate. So up to early 70s, Japanese growth rate per capita is like 8.5%, which is very high. And then after around the first oil crisis, our growth rate slowed down to 3.5% per year, and then until early 90s. But after early 90s, our growth rate is less than 1%, 0.7 or something like that. And then we asked why we stopped growing. That's the big questions all Japanese economists and the policymaker is discussing about it. And initially we thought it's due to the banking crisis, but the banking crisis cannot explain like 30 years of the stagnations. So that's why we start thinking about intangible capitals and the productivity growth. And somewhat similar country is actually Italy. So Italy used to be grow fast, actually. They call it the Italian miracle. And then stopped growing, and the last 20 years, it's hardly growing, actually. So Japan and Italy somehow has a lot of similarities. We have a very good food, and we have a volcano, and also we have a gangsters too. But anyway, so the Spain is somewhat similar, but again, after early 2000, the growth rate is stagnated. So all these countries, there are one aspect would be the labor market, we thought, or the skill acquisitions. So, and this is from trade point of view. So it's I took it from a paper by Kiyotaki. It's not me, actually, different international trade economist. And what he looked at it is the relative skill content of trade. And basically how much the export contains skill relative to unskilled, and take a ratio to the import. And that number is bigger than 1, like 1.4 means the export contains 1.4 times as big as relative skill comparing to the import. Therefore, Japan has a comparative advantage of skill-intensive productions. How do you measure the skill? This is very rough, but Kiyota used the input-output table produced by the Japan Productivity Database. And that's like about 50 manufacturing sector and about 50 some non-manufacturing sector. And then skill is defined as occupations. So like a professional, technical, and managerial is considered as a skilled job, occupation, and everything else is unskilled. So skilled is about 20% of the occupations. And when you look at it, Japan has a very strong comparative advantage of skill-intensive productions. But the mid-90s, it starts losing it. So it's still above the 1, but they start losing the comparative advantage of skill-intensive sectors' productions. So that's the one hint. So you might say just other countries start catching up. But if other country, like especially China, starts catching up is the only reason, then it should be more pronounced for the relative capital contents of trade. So this is how much export contains the capital relative to labor aggregate. And again, this is bigger than 1, which means Japan has a comparative advantage of capital-intensive technologies. When you do it in US, something funny happens. This is the ratio is less than 1, which is called the Leontief paradox. But in Japan, it's not the Leontief paradox. It's above the 1. And also, it stopped growing, but it didn't decline. Skill case, we lose the comparative advantage. Concerning capital, we didn't lose. Therefore, looks like the skill accumulation is more important to understand the stagnations. This is only casual hint, not the real empirical hard evidence. One thing we notice is the lifetime employment. Actually, this is the tenure. So they ask people how many years you're working on the same company. And if you ask the 38 years old people, male, the old days, this is the cohort of 44, born in 1944 to 49. The answer was like 13 years. So which means 38 years old male, like many of them continue to work the same company. Because 13 years is like from 25 to 38, you continue to work in the same company. And this is average, so some people are longer, some people are shorter, but on average 13 years. And this is very long, actually. That's the kind of lifetime employment. But the lifetime employment system starts deteriorating to the younger cohort. So especially youngest cohort here is born in 70 to 81. So this is a cohort, actually, they enter into the labor market in 90s. So they start affected by the recessions and the stagnations. But you can see the tenure gets shorter for the younger cohort, the more recent cohort than the older cohort. It's not true for the women. Actually, women, first of all, the tenure is much shorter. So it's like 7 years, 8 years than the man. But more recent cohort has a longer tenure, which means that nowadays the women tends to have a more temporary job than permanent job, and the more recent cohort has a more permanent job. But still, it's much shorter than men. So, which means the men has fraction of men who have a permanent job is bigger higher than the women. So the one thing we notice is that these questions, how the worker is going to accumulate the skill, especially managerial skill, which we call it intangible capital in today's talk, and on the job. So how this skill is transmitted from one generation to the next generations. So this is the questions we want to ask. And then we want to ask how the temporary shock, could be a banking crisis or some other disaster, have an effect to the persistent impact to the performance of the economy. This is related to the propagation over time, aggregate economies propagation over time. The other one is how difference in initial condition of different household or worker leads to the big inequality across the people. This is the propagation across the household or across the people. So we try to explain propagation over time as well as propagation across the people. So that's the question we want to ask. This is the applied theory piece, even though it's empirically motivated. So that's my comparative advantage. So I will do my way. And how do you do? We try to develop the overlapping generations model, simple overlapping generations model with on-the-job training, actually. On-the-job training is through the job, they accumulate the managerial skills. And the friction we are emphasizing is the same as yesterday. It's a limited commitment. This time, limited commitment here is you cannot pre-commit to stay in the same company. So they might move to the other company. Yesterday's case, you cannot pre-commit to maintain the plant you constructed in future. So limited commitment is everywhere in the financial friction style model. Typically, one way to think about financial friction is the lender give the money borrower or purchasing power. So today, this is a present goods. It's like and then borrower promised to repay in future goods or purchasing power in future. The problem is the present goods is provided today, but when future comes, this is already done. And then borrower can change their mind. So I already eat today's goods, and why do I have to pay? And they change the mind. So this is the limited commitment. Sometimes people call time inconsistency problem, but the easiest way to understand is Shakespeare. Actually, Shakespeare has a saying that if you lend money to a friend, you lose both money and friend. That's what happens. So this is the limited commitment, actually, we are talking about in different contexts. So the idea, before writing down the model, idea is a skilled member can train the youngster to become future skilled. So this is on the job training. But the training is costly in the sense that the teacher have to spend some time. At the same time, student, the trainee, have to spend time to learn instead of producing output. So the training cost is mostly time cost. Like you sacrifice the regular productions to learn as well as to teach. And so that's why we call intangible investment. So investment means you put the resource today in order to get the return in future. So that's the intangible investment. But the outcome of training is very different across the trainee. Look at the students, you're all different, and the outcome can be very different too. Some of them are spectacularly successful, some of them are not that, but this is the nature of the beast of the skill accumulations. And the idea we use is the firm is a coalition of present skilled teacher and future skilled students. It's a bit like a economics department too. So there are teachers as well as students, and so that's the way to think about the firm. This is a definition Boyd and Prescott use. So firm as a dynamic coalitions of skilled workers, and then the training is partially coalitions firm specific. Yesterday we used the skill is the engineer skill is perfectly general. You can use it everywhere without a loss. Here we are assuming it's partly specific. Not everything you lose by moving, but some fraction you lose. And that will generate some commitment, partial commitment, to stay in the same coalitions. And then youngsters are heterogeneous in terms of initial endowment, money, fund, as well as the learning ability. So the youngsters are all different. And this initial endowment can come from the parents. But right now, we are not making the inheritance. Extension, we did try the inheritance model, but today's presentation, like initial fund you get is the exogenous. And then with full commitment, which means you can commit to stay in the same coalition, actually the equilibrium outcome is training only depend upon learning ability, nothing else. Like money doesn't matter. So who is going to be trained well or will depend upon only learning ability, not the money. And moreover, actually the idiosyncratic shock is all shared. So the people are risk averse, therefore it's better to share the risk than egalitarian than the all different in consumptions. And actually the Japanese traditional company is a bit like this actually. So like they train a lot when they are young, and wage is not that different at the top executive and middle. So as long as you start same group, actually they are similar. Actually like Toyota's, for example, like even now, like Toyota's CEO, the annual income is lower than the Toyota America CEO, actually. So because of we are more egalitarian than Americans. So the even same companies, there are some more egalitarian aspects to it, and we don't have a salary like a multi-million type salaries like Elon Musk is doing that sort of things, but we don't have that actually. So that's partly because of we are mutually insured, and we do have a egalitarian aspect, but that one is not feasible when you have a this limited commitment. So limited commitment means the successful employee cannot pre-commit to stay in the same company. So then what happens is a very successful one will leave the company unless you pay well. This is the commitment problem. Then in that kind of environment, actually the ex ante, the training will depend upon the ability as well as money. And so the rich youngster who tends to receive the more intensive training, while poor youngster may work as unskilled workers. This is actually the self-selection, so equilibrium outcome. So think about the job like a very skill-intensive job, like doctors, lawyers, and academics, and also artists, and the idiosyncratic shock is huge. And then actually nowadays academic takes a long time, right? So and in order to enter into graduate program, and then graduate program takes like 6 years, and if you are very poor, the people don't choose that kind of job. It takes like 6 years, it's too long, and sometimes it's even longer. So, and the journalists and doctors takes long time. And if you are short in cash and very poor, unless you get a nice scholarship, you cannot get there. So of course the talent matters. The extremely talented may get some funding, but the medium talented, they don't choose that kind of job. So that's the meaning of this. And then what happens is also this mobility means very successful people demand the higher wage, because they can say, if you don't pay me, I will go somewhere else. And so that's what happens. And as a result, you get the large inequalities. And then when you have a shock to reduce the enforcement or endowment, it has a persistent impact. What is the shock to the tightening of limited commitment in this case? Japanese context, actually, before the 90s, mobility across the company for mid-career type job is very limited, actually. But the 90s, we enter into the deep recessions. Companies start firing career type people, or not really firing, but they start pushing out. So then secondary market for the mid-career type starts developing a lot. As a result, the people start moving, and it's easier to move too. So before that, when you quit some nice company, people say, oh, what's wrong about you? But after 90s, they don't ask that way. And that's the limited commitment is actually more, commitment become more difficult, or you don't lose much by moving. Then that will disturb the intangible capital investment, and also aggregate productivity go down, and inequality go up persistently. So that's the kind of things we try to do in this context. Do you have questions about motivations or ideas? Or feel free to, yeah.
Can you go back to the slide?
Yeah.
The non-previous one.
This one?
Yes, this one. So it seems like education is playing a role, right?
Education.
For male, people are taking more education.
Actually, the women is more educated in Japan. So the fraction of people who go to college is bigger, actually. So female
participation in college.
Yeah. when you start 25, so people in the college, maybe graduate student is still around here, but yeah. So it's not directly related to education. So it's more about how after you find the first job, how long you are staying. And that's the difference. And the old cohort tends to stay longer than the younger cohort. Younger cohort is moving more. And so secondary market for mid-career develop, there are more people who start moving around. So that's the sense. And then the company's point of view, they start worrying about training these youngsters. If you train them, they might leave. So the old days, for example, like a top employee, the company don't hesitate to send to the foreign graduate program. Actually, when I was a graduate student in US, there are a lot of Japanese employees who are doing the PhD, not the PhD, more like an MBA. And I asked, they don't worry about you come back? And no. So sending employee to US MBA costs a lot of money. It's not just 2 years they don't work, but also stipends and tuitions. They pay everything. And so because of they didn't worry about coming back. Nowadays, no, they don't do it. And a lot of graduate the MBA type student disappears. Like, we don't see many Japanese students in graduate program sponsored by the company. So that's the things. Yeah?
So in your paper, you use limited commitment to describe the situation of Japan.
Yeah.
But in the literature, the firms can also use some policies to attract people to stay in the firm, in the company. For example, the efficiency wage theory, they say that firm can pay higher wages in order to make their workers to stay longer. So then when you compare those scenarios, how could you say that your story could fit the situation of Japan more or better?
So this case, I will go along the model. But so the one thing is the efficiency wage style is there here, actually. So it's not the, and also the wage is much more complicated because of the insurance element to it. So there are mutual insurance aspects is contains. And then efficiency wage style things kick in for the outside options. And so more efficient, the people who got skill is actually have a better outside options. Therefore, the company cannot underpay these people. So for detail, I probably it's easier to explain everything along the model, but it does have a, so company is going to do as much as possible, taking account the limited commitment constraint. So we are doing the sort of optimum contract style, so that's the people, there is no way you can do better than this, taking account the limited commitment. And some aspects has a efficiency wage aspects as well as some aspects are mutual insurance aspect, but all subject to the limited commitment constraint. Yes. Slightly difficult, but at this point I cannot explain more clearly, but I will explain along the framework. So, are you okay to? Shall we go to the model then? The model is basically overlapping generations model for everybody live for 2 periods. And we assume the population is constant, but we can extend into the population is growing or declining. You can do that. And so when you are young, the agent is young, they are heterogeneous in terms of learning ability, kappa, as well as endowment. E is the family money, for example. So that's distributed according to F. And then everybody has the same amount of time. 24 hours, it's equal. And then you can use this time for working or learning or teaching. So you can use the different way. And the utility function, we use just the log utility with expected discounted utility of log of the consumption. So that part is, and then this is the heart of the model, actually. I have to spend some time. So basically, the firm is a dynamic coalition of skilled worker, present skilled and the future skilled. And then present skilled member has a total skill this much. So individual skill added and the total skill this K. And some fraction they can use for the production purpose. This KW. KW is the intangible which is used for productions. Then production function is intangible used for production and labor input. So we ignore the tangible capital for today's talk. You can add later. So this is the production function. And then when present skilled allocate the K twiddle amount of skill, and the youngest is with learning ability spend H fraction of time. Then the next generation will get this much of skill. So this is the skill production technology. And so basically the education is teachers' input as well as students' input. And both have to work together. And actually the students' input is much bigger than teachers' input, honestly speaking. Like I would say 80% students' input and 20% teachers. So this is the teachers' input. And students' input is their ability times the time. Time times ability. That's the input. And here the important assumption is we exclude the externality. Like actually the students learn each other's. Usually it's not individual learning. So something called the peer group effect. And also sometimes the social knowledge matters. So it's not the teacher's knowledge input, but also society's knowledge matters. And initially, we didn't have society's one, but in order to focus on limited commitment aspects, we decided to exclude everything. So basically, the teacher's input, attention, and the student's effort, talent times time, is going to be outcome of determine the outcome of skill student acquires. And at the same time, this is the average target. Actual, the skill the student acquire is subject to the idiosyncratic shock Z. So this is the idiosyncratic shock we are talking about. Basically, outcome will depend a lot, not just effort and teacher's input, but also idiosyncratic shock Z. And so that's the skill production technology. And almost everything comes from this. So this is the heart of the paper. And the friction we are talking about is if this student move to the other company, you lose the theta fraction. So that's the specificity we are talking about. So if theta is 0, you don't lose anything. Theta is 1 means you lose everything. So you cannot move to the other companies or coalitions. So these two, this one and that one, around here is the heart of the paper. Do you see that? So how do you characterize equilibrium of this kind of thing? So do you have any idea? So this is the technology of acquiring skill, teacher's input and student's input, and the idiosyncratic shock. And this is a utility function. The people have a concave utility, therefore they don't like the risk. So do you have any idea how it works? So the approach we are going to use is something called the optimum contract. So basically we are looking at the situation like suppose the present skilled member total have this much of skill, KT. And the fraction you can use for production purpose, and the fraction you can use for teaching purpose. So, and how much you allocate teaching service will depend upon the student's characteristic. So like learning ability as well as the endowment, money. So this is the complete information environment. Like you can directly observe the learning ability, which is not always true, but as well as the money. And so depending on, this is the talent, and this is money. And then basically the current skilled worker is providing the compensation package. Okay? Today you can eat this much. And this is the amount you are supposed to put the effort. And this is the attention the coalition is giving you. So it's teaching service, which means that this is the expected skill you are going to get. And this is the consumption you are going to get. But the consumption will depend upon idiosyncratic shock, Z. So that's the compensation package. And so the skilled workers, skilled youngsters, is going to receive this compensation package. While the people who choose to be unskilled, you get just a wage. So the competitive wage. So then what's the objective? Objective is this is a profit, so output, which is a function of the intangible for production, and the labor. Some of the labor come from the unskilled labor. Some of the labor come from the future skilled, the trainee who work for production instead of learning. It's like a teaching assistant or that sort of things. So this is the labor supplied by the trainee. So total labor, and that's the output. And then you pay to the routine worker, unskilled worker at the competitive wage. And then what is going to get is this is the amount, KT plus 1 is skill, aggregate skill. This coalition is going to acquire in the aggregate. And then this is the return on the skill. So KT plus 1 is a profit from the per unit of skill. Because of this is constant return to scale, profit doesn't depend upon the scale, only depend upon the profit is proportional to the scale, sorry. Per profit, the rent rental price or the profit per unit of skill is only depend upon wage rate of this guy. And then this is the profit you expect minus the compensation package to pay for when people get old. This gap is the amount you can raise fund from outside. So and then this is the therefore present value of net profit minus the debt inherited from yesterday's. So this is basically the present value of today's profit plus present value of profit. What's this one is actually the endowment is provided by youngsters, but you pay to the youngsters. Typically, this number is negative, so you have to pay to the youngsters. But some of the youngsters bring money, pay the tuitions, and some of the job like a journalist nowadays the trainee pay instead of receive the money. So that's this one. So that's the objective. What's the constraint? This is a constraint of intangible. Total intangible is either used for production purpose or training purpose. This is a labor supplied by training. The fraction of time which is not learning is put it in production. And this is the skill of the next period. And this is the net profit. You can borrow money against it. And the competition means you have to give the compensation package has to be at least as good as outside options. And this is the expected utility of compensation package. You get this today's consumption. This is tomorrow's consumption contingent on the idiosyncratic shock. Expected utility has to be at least as good as outside option. Outside option includes the working as a routine worker. And the limited commitment is this one. So limited commitment says if the idiosyncratic shock realizes and the skilled worker work for somebody else, the skill shrinks by factor 1 minus theta, but then they get the profit RT plus 1 per unit. And this is the lower bound. And then consumption cannot be lower than that. So basically, you cannot underpay. If you push the consumption of successful worker below that, they leave to somewhere else. So join the other coalitions. And so that's the contract. So it's not as simple as the efficiency wage, but efficiency wage is partly here actually, but it's more like a consumption, the payment package as a function of realization of idiosyncratic shock ex ante, and then to maximize the expected. So this is the expected utility is as good as outside option, and then coalition is maximizing profit. In this sense, you cannot do better than this, actually. Is it clear? So maybe by seeing the result, you might see it more, actually. So these kind of things, actually, the way to construct a model is let's have a story first like this. So skilled worker is going to train the youngsters, outcome depend upon idiosyncratic shock and that sort of thing. And then what is the key friction we are going to put is by moving you lose something. And then we try to construct the stories. And then most of the effort we put is how to formulate the skill accumulation technologies. And so that's the key. And then once you do that, you can formulate the individual's problem. And what is the equilibrium? Equilibrium is basically is a state variable is actually the how many unskilled worker is there from yesterday, and how much aggregate skill economy has. It turns out to be its constant return to scale. You can summarize by not the distribution of skill, but actually the one number, aggregate, is enough. And then A is the aggregate productivity, theta is the limited commitment you lose, and F is the distribution of youngsters' initial skill and endowment. And first firm is solving this optimum contract problem, and then labor market clears. What is the meaning of labor market clear? The wage is basically marginal product of labor. And then this simple routine worker is coming from today's unskilled. Yesterday they didn't trained, and also this period they don't get trained. So there are two groups of young routine worker as well as old routine worker. That's the routine worker supply and demand. And then overlapping generations model, actually the borrowing and lending is within the same generations, because the old-timer is disappear next period. And so therefore, what the financial market conditions said is the total endowment of youngsters and the wage income is either consumed or invested. What is the investment? Which is the fraction of time you use to learn instead of producing. And also this is the teaching, the tuition fee. Basically, you have to compensate the old-timer to pay for opportunity cost. Instead of producing, they sacrifice the time, so you have to pay for it. So these are the training investment, intangible investment. So intangible investment and the consumption is going to add up to the total wage income of youngsters and the endowment. So that's the financial market clearing conditions. And then the two endogenous state variable, which is the how much is the skill next period, aggregates intangible, as well as unskilled routine worker, is the, by the way, N is the fraction of people who is becoming trainee. Usually it's either 1 or 0. So this is like how many fraction of people are in the routine worker instead of becoming trainee. And then this is the accumulation of the skill due to this contract and the people who are become trainee. So that's the definition of equilibrium. Yeah.
Can you say it again? What is theta?
Theta is the fraction of skill you lose by moving. So later we do a little exercise which the theta changes. Limited commitment changes what happens. So, but this is exogenous. So theta and the productivity A and also distribution of the youngsters' initial endowment, it's all exogenous. Key endogenous state variable is the how much is the intangible capital of the economy and how many unskilled is there from yesterday. So how many old unskilled out there?
So when you say tightening of the commitment,
is the change of the theta, yes. Theta drops is the, like a fraction you lose by moving drop is a tightening the limited commitment.
We can also interpret it as like skills becoming more and more general.
Yeah, that's true. That's Yeah. It comes from the skill become the more general, or secondary market for mid-career job develop more, so it's easier to move.
So in the case of Japan in the 1990s,
Yeah. Theta drops. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so as usual, we are going to do the guess and verify. And the easiest one is start from extreme case, which is the perfect commitment. If you move to the other company, you lose everything. So then that's the simplest case to solve. So always these kind of things, you want to do some benchmark first before doing main focus part. So what is going to happen in that kind of economy? Basically, whether a youngster is trained or not depend upon learning ability. So learning ability is above the threshold, you get trained. Below that, you are out. So it's like an entrance examination. And below that, sorry, you cannot go to the college or that sort of things. And then after the becoming among the trainee, actually the how much get trained depend upon ability. Actually, turns out to be it's constant return. So if you are doubly talented, teachers spend double attention, and as a result, outcome is doubled. So on average, so the K plus, which is the next period scale on average, is proportional to kappa. And this doesn't depend upon how much money the parents have, or only depend upon skill. And that's the first best allocations, actually. And then, moreover, the consumption doesn't depend upon idiosyncratic shock Z. So all the idiosyncratic shock is shared by the trainee. And every trainee with the same characteristics get the same consumption. This is an extreme version of the egalitarian payment. But it's not egalitarian in terms of the talent. It's egalitarian in terms of the idiosyncratic shock. So that, and when you look at the occupation choice, this is the youngster's endowment. This is the youngster's learning ability. Basically, what happens is above the K star, you get trained. And it doesn't depend upon how much money you bring. Parents rich or poor, doesn't matter. So, and then intensity of learning, training will be proportional to the learning ability. So that's the benchmark. See, suppose the theta is not 1, less than 1. You don't lose everything by moving to the other company or coalition. Then that's the limited commitment case, LC. So then what happens is that whether you get trained or not, or depend upon not just talent, but also endowment. So the rich youngster get more trained, and rich and more talented are going to get more training. And so this is the outcome of limited commitment, which looks slightly kind of elitist. Elitist as well as you need the talent as well as money to get trained. And intensity of training does depend upon both. So that's the outcome. So you might say, is it the outcome? Or this is like a equilibrium outcome, not like something happened to the society. So this is the kind of economics way of explaining sort of institutions. So once you take account institutions seriously, this is the limited commitment. That's how the contract and the equilibrium look like. Yeah.
How should I think of the individual endowment when I enter into a company?
So basically, you pay. You might get the scholarship, but you may not pay everything. So then the poor people cannot pay the gap of the cost. And the scholarship part. So scholarship is only partial. And then the coalition is going to recover the scholarship part by the future returns. So future, you are effectively repaying the debt. When you get the subsidy for learning today, then you are repaying the debt in future by giving up some of the profit. The gap between profit you earn minus the consumption you receive is the repayment of the debt. So this is like state is acting like a limited insurance as well as limited borrowing. Because so that's how it look like. And the interpretation is through the consumption allocation versus the income you are receiving. So I will show you a little bit more picture.
So if I produce like a stock option or
it looks like, but it's against the contract. So this is how it look like. So suppose the idiosyncratic shock is the disaster versus the spectacular, then the output generated by this skilled worker is proportional to that. And then what you have is the consumption. So consumption is this one. And actually, log utility, you want some minimum consumption. So what happens is if you are disaster, you get subsidy. So minimum consumption you can achieve. But after you become mildly successful, then what happens is the payment consumption is less than your contribution to the coalition. The gap is partly repaying the debt, partly cross-subsidizing the people who fail. So that's the gap between the black line output you contribute versus the consumption earning you receive. So you see it works as a mutual insurance as well as the repayment of the debt. Because of the training is costly and you don't have enough endowment to pay for it. That's partly come from this gap. But since this gap is finite, what happens is the richer people has an advantage because of the richer youngster can pay themselves. In order to become journalist, you can work for free in first few years to become a good journalist. So that's what we see here.
So endowment is exogenously given for every agent. So there's a distribution for everyone. Okay. So how about if you consider that children can inherit? So
rich parents is going to inherit more money to the kids. So that is giving the kids more. And so then we did try actually. It does create a more persistent inequality basically. So if parents are successful, kids has advantage because they have more inheritance. So that is the implication. But right now we try to concentrate on within the period and the aggregate outcome. So we did this way for Yeah. So, okay.
It seems like the correlation between endowment and the learning ability would have a large aggregate.
Yeah. So if you are more talented as well as richer, it does has more effect. Yeah, and maybe parents' learning ability and kids' learning ability is correlated. then you are going to get the bigger inequality through the not just talent itself, but also like money. Okay. So then we can write down a little numerical example. So of course I cannot do it. So Yang Shenxing did it. So what we did, this is not meant to be empirical. It's more like a numerical example to illustrate how model works. So we assume the endowment distribution, and the endowment and the talent is uncorrelated, unlike the inheritance model. And then the fraction of people don't have any endowment. 1 minus omega don't have endowment. And omega fraction people, endowment distribution is uniform between 0 and 1. So that's a little bit complicated way of saying that things. But you see the fraction of positive endowment people is 80%. 20 doesn't have anything. And uniform distribution. And then talent is also, learning ability is uniform distribution. And the share of intangible in production is 30%. And share of teachers' input is also 30%. And then utility discount is 0.75. Because of this is a generation model, so 25% this interest rate is not outrageously high. And the fraction you lose is the 10%. So by moving to the other coalition, you lose 10% of skill. And the standard deviation of idiosyncratic shock is 1. So then what happens? This is the full commitment case. Full commitment case, actually, in our little example, accumulation of skill is very efficient. So what happens is the society is going to only a small fraction of very talented people, they train like crazy. And all the other people are not trained. But actually the nice thing is the income is not that different. So because of so many intangible capital, labor productivity is very high. As a result, even unskilled get a very good income. And top skilled get a little bit higher income, but not that much. This is a bit like a Sweden. So which marginal tax rate is like 70% or something ridiculously high. So that's this one. Yeah. So that's the full commitment society. And when you have a limited commitment, even 10% lose, then what happens? Whether you get trained or not depend upon the skill as well as endowment. So the E equal 1 is the richest group of the youngsters. Richest group of youngsters, even mildly talented, they get trained. And then more money you bring, you get trained more. And at the same time, idiosyncratic shock is not mutually insured. So therefore, if you are successful, the consumption is very high, earning is very high. If you are unsuccessful, low. By the way, we assume once you become trainee, you cannot go back to the unskilled. So once you become graduate student, you cannot go back to the construction sector to do the heavy lifting. You lost that skill. So that's why it could be lower. So unsuccessful case, you better watch out. So maybe lower the unskilled. So, but you are successful, it's very high. And more talented and more richer, you get much higher income. And this is the top 10, bottom 10, the stick. And you can imagine it can be spectacular when top 1%, because the top 1% is, so top 10% is 8 times as high as the average people. So and then top 1 is spectacular, basically. So you can get very high top inequality easily by having the limited commitment model. So that's the inequality part. And then you might say, wait a second. So is the limited commitment losing a lot is always good things? So commitment is always good things. So the one negative aspects of traditional Japanese company is okay, you might be getting trained, but sometimes you don't like that company at the end. So you want to move. So it's not just idiosyncratic shock, but also match-specific shock is there. So once you find that this company don't suit me, and you cannot go to the other company, then that's a disaster. So that's the dark side of the limited mobility. So good part is you might get trained well, and you can mutually insured with your colleague. But the bad part is once you're stuck, you cannot move. And so in order to explain that kind of negative aspects of limited mobility or commitment is not only productivity, the skill, depend upon idiosyncratic general component Z, but also match-specific component theta. And the theta is significant. Then what happens is even if you lose by moving to the other company, if theta, match-specific component is very low, it's less than 1 minus theta, it's actually you want to move and try the new match. And we are assuming the new match you can insure. So actually this is the ideal way of moving. Basically, if your match-specific component is less than 1 minus theta, it's better to move to the other company to try the new things, because our average is 1. And then the idiosyncratic, the incentive constraint is still there. But this is the outcome. And then what you see is now theta is high is not necessarily good news because of the theta is high and you have more commitment or you lose more by moving to the other company. Your idiosyncratic match-specific one is bad. You're stuck there. So this the black line is actually the large match-specific shocks. It's basically the match-specific, the standard deviation is 10 times as big as the general part. These standard deviations. Then actually there is a lot of gain of moving to the other company when your matching is bad. Then in that case, actually the capital, intangible capital accumulation is low if you lose more, and intangible capital accumulation is low if you don't have much limited commitment, but it's not monotonic. It's actually there are hump shape. So a little bit of limited commitment is good, but too much commitment is bad because of you cannot move to the other company if you find the idiosyncratic much specific component. It turns out to be very bad. So that's so we try to think some trade-off. So basically, you don't want to say don't move is the best. So don't move is help to mutually insure. If you don't move, you can do the more sharing. At the same time, you can do the more intangible investment. But the dark side is if you have an idiosyncratic much specific component, stop moving, prohibit moving is a bad idea. So, okay. So do you, yeah?
So, because the incentive constraint is satisfied in equilibrium, so
yeah.
Is there exposed, is there moving?
Yeah. So exposed they move, but the moving doesn't depend upon Z. So this is, yeah.
The incentive is anti-incentive.
Yeah, this is actually It's they allow the people to move if the idiosyncratic theta shock is bad. But once you stay, then payment will be higher than this. So this is because of the Z part, you can use it somewhere else, and so it is incentive constraint is this one actually. It doesn't depend upon theta. Theta, the important assumption is theta and Z is you can observe separately, and it's a public information. If it's private information, you cannot do that. But if public information, you can identify, oh God, you don't like this, and then you better move to somebody else. But if you say, I want to get paid more, otherwise I will move to the others, then payment is going to make sure people don't have incentive to move to the other company according to the high Z.
So I understand it's not intended to be a quantitative empirical paper, but if we are going to
do something, probably you need to, you need to include
the theta using the kind of what you showed before, the changes of the average tenure and moving rate to quantify how theta changes over time.
This one will tell. So if theta is low, actually the much specific component is bad, still people don't move. So theta and the mobility, actual equilibrium mobility is correlated. Yes. Okay. So then this is the aggregate shock. So what we did is the endowment shock. So the fraction of people who have a positive endowment dropped from 80% to 72%. So 10% drop of fraction of people who have a positive endowment. And the solid line is our model, while the dotted line is a full commitment. So if endowment shock hits, actually even in the optimum growth, like a Cass-Cookman style optimum growth, investment drop because of the consumption you want to keep. Don't want to cut consumption too much. So what we see is even in the full commitment case, the intangible investment drops and the intangible capital drops. And because of that, output drops. And then interest rate is high. And then recovery is slow. But if you have a limited commitment, this 10% you lose, this solid line, the drop is sharper. And as a result, output is dropping more. Initial blip is coming from some fraction of intangible capital is used for production instead of teaching. So that's why you have an initial blip. But so you can see the endowment shock both have a persistent effect, but drop is bigger and also the more persistent when you have an idiosyncratic, this limited commitment problem. So, but perhaps more the closer to Japan is suppose the limited commitment get relaxed due to the technology become more general, or like a secondary market for the mid-career job is developed. So in this case is a permanent drop. So the loss is used to be 10% loss. Now it's only 9%. It's not that big difference, but it's still different. Then what happened is actually if you have a full commitment, actually it's a good news because of match specific mismatch, you can move and, without losing much. So output go up actually, and the investment go up and output go up. So the theta shock drop is a good news if you have a full commitment. But the limited commitment case, the investment drops, the learning drops, and as a result, initial allocation is swinging from teaching to the production, so it's initially blip, but then drops persistently. So then, looking at the different group of people, what is happening is the high endowment people, the rich youngsters, actually the cutoff talent is more relaxed. Basically, if you have a lot of money, even if mildly talented, you get trained. And but if you are less talented, it doesn't have such kind of benefit. In terms of intensive merging, you have a similar features, but all of them, intensity of training drops, but less drop for the high skilled, but high endowment people. But most of the action is extensive merging. Like then you can see the inequality expand because of the inheritance or endowment, not through the skill. So that's the outcome of the commitment shock or the secondary market development shocks. Okay, so this is the main things. So let's recap. So with limited commitment, like a commitment, you cannot pre-commit to stay in the same company. Then both ability as well as endowment of individual affect the occupation choice. Basically, whether you get trained or routine workers, occupation choice, or future managers versus the routine workers. And also intensive merging, how intensively you get trained is affected by ability as well as the endowment. And also limited commitment affect insurance against the idiosyncratic shock. And so this is a cross-section aspect of the limited commitment. And then aggregate aspect, limited commitment means is inequality in permanent as well as realizing income and consumption. And also when you have a shock to temporary or permanent shock to the degree of commitment or endowment, the output is affected. Investment, intangible, and output is affected by this kind of shock. So that's this is aggregate propagation. This is more like across people propagations. Does this make sense or? Yeah.
So I want to have in your motivation, there's a graph that men's tenure is dropping and women's tenure is rising.
Yeah.
Can your model?
So the it is related to the discrimination, actually. And so always the people think there are some self-fulfilling component, but always the women is not get trained because of the companies think women will quit sometime near futures. But then women start staying in the labor force for lifetime, then the company takes more seriously. They treat the women more equally, and not completely equally, but more equally. And as a result, they start training more. And as a result, women tends to stay in the same job more. So actually, the women's labor force participation rate used to be in Japan like M shape. So it's like so women's labor force participation age used to be like go with high and then go down and then come back. So this is the M shape type, and then go down again. So this was old days. And because of after having the first child, they drop out from labor force, and then after child get a little bit more manageable, they come back. But when they come back, it's no longer the permanent job. So that was the old days. But now the M starts disappearing. Entire things become higher. Moreover, it's become more flat. You don't see the dip. And so that's we see in Japan, actually. And the high level is higher than US now. So labor force participation of women in Japan is higher than US. So
could it be the case that like men's data and women's data are moving in different directions?
Yeah, it could be. Yes. So, but yeah, I don't want to speculate too much on this. It's more complicated, but yes, there's less discrimination, and also job become more permanent in nature for women. Yes, but the men starts moving too, and sometimes it might be related. Yes, so since the women is more serious wage earner, men said, okay, in that case I move. I don't like this job. So yeah.
So in your model, less commitment may hurt economic growth.
Yeah.
But it may benefit you.
Yes. So that's why.
Consider welfare and
Yeah.
decide
Yeah. So that's why we introduced the match-specific component. So if you have a big match-specific component, actually mobility helps because you have a second chance to try the new match. And then actually you can see if match-specific component is important, not necessarily bigger commitment is better. It's the middle one is better than either full commitment or no commitment. So that is related to. This is a level effect. We don't have an endogenous growth here because of this is you can see the performance of the economy is not monotonic, not the best in the full commitment or no commitment. In some way in the middle is better. Yeah?
Yeah, the parameter of living commitment basically determines the wage or payoff for the older workers. But I'm just wondering what's the difference between the living commitment parameter and the bargaining power, because that also determines.
This is a competition. So the way we did it is you basically solve everything simultaneously. So the company is not there are some employer and the worker. It's actually the company is a coalition of skilled workers, and the coalition of young skilled work, future skilled worker, and old skilled worker. So then they try to do best to maximize expected utility or the participation constraint, and then profit maximizing or consumption of the old timer maximizing. So that's the best, actually. So it's a little different style of equilibrium concept. But the key is coming from company is a dynamic coalition of skilled worker. Yeah.
In your introduction, you present the comparative advantage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
But in your model, it's not.
Yeah, we don't have a trade, but when we allow the trade, yes, the level of K, the intangible capital level, does affect the comparative advantage. If the economy has a big intangible, and the big skilled accumulations, then they are going to specialize more in skill-intensive the goods production for export, and then you import the unskilled intensive goods. Yes. Yeah.
So, like in the current setting, the young generation will draw endowment every time when they.
Yeah.
So suppose that we allow it to accumulate.
Yeah.
And then there are some like rich people
Yeah.
can self-finance things.
Yeah.
Will that change your result?
It will change. So this is a 2 period. So only endowment coming from parents. And then the only way to get the endogenous endowment is through the inheritance. So the parents care about the kids, and then they leave some endowment, and then they will generate this dynamics of endowment. But if you allow people to live longer than just 2 periods, you can have a situation like a first period you work as a routine worker to save, and then next period you go like get trained job or better job. So that's possible too. Yes.
So the observations you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah.
Are there big diversities across industries?
Yeah. I think so, but I don't have a data to substantiate. Yes, some of the industry they move a lot. Yes, traditionally like a banking industry, not many people move, but now after the banking crisis, they move a lot, and also there are different group of company who enter, like foreign bankers and foreign companies come. Foreign company people moves a lot actually, and it's less egalitarian than Japanese companies actually. But I cannot pinpoint the cross industry or cross section. But yes, I will think about it more on that. Yeah.
Well, I remember like in the scale production, the technology scale, like there is a B.
Yeah.
Like that.
This is the efficiency of cost function. Yeah. So, but the B can change, yes, and maybe the public policies like government role is changing the B or changing the initial distribution of kappa. So initial distribution of kappa will depend upon the educations. So maybe in order to get the more nice like outcome or like increasing the minimum kappa will be the good things for the society. So So maybe the easiest, the most effective way to cope with the inequality problem is raising the minimum kappa by the mandatory education. So.
But if you raise all kappa, won't it be no people want to be a routine worker?
Some kappa, it's a relative kappa matters too. So unless it's completely equal, then yes. And also this learning equation may not be the best to think about the role of public policy, because peer group effect is important, as well as society's knowledge is important. So probably in order to think about the role of public policy, we have to change this, the skill accumulation technology.
So in terms of policies, to increase where they are.
Yeah. If
Exactly, you mentioned what other...
One thing is once you have an externality, like say society's K matters for the learning, then there is a reason to promote the intangible capital accumulation, because the average is higher, makes everybody's learning easier. So it's like a basic education or basic research. So that has an externality.
We'd like to thank Professor Nobu for this talk, and if you want, please join us at the 515G for the tea party and further discussion. Thank you very much.